What if we're not the first civilization on Earth? Not the first to build cities, not the first to burn fuel, not the first to change the climate. If an advanced society rose millions of years ago, would we even know? Imagine this: skyscrapers, highways, satellites in orbit, then collapse. Extinction, time. 10 million years pass, 50 million, 100 million. What would be left? No buildings, no smartphones, no steel beams. Erosion grinds cities to dust. Tectonic plates recycle the crust. Oceans swallow continents. Deep time erases almost everything. So here's the real question. If another industrial civilization existed before humans, would the Earth even remember them? In 2018, two scientists asked that question seriously, not on a podcast, not in a conspiracy forum, but in a peer-reviewed scientific paper. Astrophysicist Adam Frank and climate scientist Gavin Schmidt weren't claiming ancient cities existed. They were asking something far more unsettling. If an industrial civilization rose and fell millions of years ago, what evidence would we look for? And would it even survive? They called it the Silurian Hypothesis. The name comes from the ancient reptilian species in Doctor Who. But the idea itself isn't science fiction. It's a detection problem, a geological puzzle, a thought experiment about deep time and the fragility of evidence. We assume we would see ruins, fossilized cities, metal skeletons and rock. But that's not how Earth works. The surface of our planet is restless. Rain falls, wind cuts stone, ice advances and retreats, mountains rise, mountains vanish. Most ocean floor is less than 200 million years old. It gets pulled back into the mantle like a conveyor belt. Whatever once stood there is gone. Even on land, erosion is relentless. After just a few million years, concrete becomes sediment, steel becomes rust, glass becomes sand. Think about our own cities, New York, Tokyo, London. How long would they last without maintenance? Hundreds of years? Thousands? Now stretch that timeline. 10 million years, 50 million, 100 million. Civilization becomes a thin chemical whisper in the rock. Dinosaurs ruled this planet for over 160 million years. Modern humans, we've had industry for barely 2 centuries. If something existed before us, it would likely be separated by tens of millions of years. A gap so vast it defies imagination. So the Silurian Hypothesis doesn't ask, were there dinosaur engineers? It asks, what would the geological record actually preserve? And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because we are running the experiment right now. Future geologists, millions of years from now, won't see our skyscrapers. They won't see our data centers. They won't see our satellites. They'll see something else, a sudden spike in carbon, a rapid warming event, a strange layer of plastic fragments, unnatural chemicals locked in sediment. In other words, they would see a disruption, a brief industrial pulse in the rock record. And here's the unsettling part. Earth's history already contains sudden climate spikes, events that happened fast, geologically speaking. One of them occurred about 56 million years ago. Global temperatures jumped dramatically, carbon levels surged, oceans changed chemistry. It's called the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. Scientists still debate exactly what triggered it. Volcanism, methane release, something else? The Silurian Hypothesis doesn't say it was industry. There's no evidence of that. But it asks a provocative question. If it were industry, would we know? Would we distinguish ancient factories from massive volcanic eruptions? Would we tell apart industrial carbon from natural carbon bursts? Because chemistry doesn't record intent. It only records change. If a civilization burned fossil fuels, altered nitrogen cycles, created synthetic compounds, the signature might look disturbingly familiar. A sharp anomaly, then silence, then millions of years of normal Earth processes. That's the haunting brilliance of the idea. It reframes our assumptions. We think civilization leaves monuments. In deep time, it leaves chemistry. So maybe the real question isn't, were we first? Maybe it's, how many civilizations could rise and fall between geological pages? Imagine Earth as a 4.5 billion year book. Human civilization occupies a fraction of a sentence. Could there be other erased sentences? Not myths, not Atlantis, but industrial species separated by epochs. Species that rose, transformed the atmosphere, then vanished, leaving only a strange layer in the stone. The Silurian Hypothesis doesn't prove anything. It doesn't claim hidden cities under rock. It does something more powerful. It challenges our confidence in the record. Because absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence, especially across tens of millions of years. And now we arrive at the deeper implication. If industrial civilizations are hard to detect, what does that mean for searching other planets? When we scan distant worlds for life, we look for atmospheric signatures, oxygen, methane, carbon imbalance. But what if we're looking at planets that already had civilizations, long gone, their signals faded into geological noise? Maybe Earth itself is proof that industrial species are temporary, a brief flare in planetary history. Maybe the silence of the universe isn't because no one else existed. Maybe it's because civilizations don't leave fossils. They leave scars, and scars heal. Which brings us back to the original question. If another civilization rose millions of years before humans, would we even know? The Silurian hypothesis is not evidence of a lost civilization. There are no fossilized machines, no buried highways, no mysterious alloys. That absence matters. But here's where it gets interesting again. The absence of artifacts might be exactly what we should expect. Think about this. How much physical evidence would we leave behind after 50 million years? Not emotionally, geologically. Plastic feels permanent, steel feels strong, concrete feels solid. But against tectonic plates and erosion, they're temporary. Even Mount Rushmore will eventually collapse. Even the pyramids will erode. Stone doesn't defeat time, it negotiates with it, and time always wins. So scientists asked a sharper question. What can't time easily erase? The answer isn't buildings, it's chemistry. Industrial civilizations alter three major systems: the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and sediment composition. Those changes embed themselves in rock layers. Right now, we are injecting carbon into the atmosphere faster than at almost any point in geological history. That spike will fossilize. Future geologists won't see cars. They'll see a sudden carbon isotope shift, a chemical fingerprint of combustion. We're also producing synthetic molecules that have never existed naturally. Some of them may persist for millions of years. And then there's nuclear activity, plutonium isotopes, radioactive anomalies, tiny signals, but measurable. Now here's the hook. If another species industrialized before us, their signature might look disturbingly similar. Not cities, not bones holding tools, just a thin, strange geological layer. But there's a problem. Natural events can mimic those signals. Massive volcanic eruptions can release enormous amounts of carbon. Methane bursts from the ocean floor can spike global temperatures. Asteroid impacts can alter atmospheric chemistry overnight. Earth doesn't need industry to create chaos. So how would we tell the difference? That's the core tension of the hypothesis. Detection, not belief. Scientists would look for combinations. Carbon spikes plus synthetic compounds. Climate shifts plus unusual sediment changes. Patterns that feel engineered. So far, we haven't found that combination. That's important. There is no known evidence of a prior industrial species. But here's the uncomfortable twist. Our geological record becomes thinner the farther back you go. Rocks older than 100 million years are rarer on the ocean floor. Continental crust gets recycled. Evidence disappears. Which means this. If something happened 300 million years ago, we might simply not have the page anymore. Imagine reading a book where entire chapters were ripped out. Would you confidently say nothing happened in those gaps? Now zoom out even further. Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Complex life has existed for over 500 million years. Humans reached industry in about 200,000 years of existence. That's astonishingly fast. If evolution produced intelligence once, is it impossible it did so twice, separated by extinction? Dinosaurs dominated Earth for 160 million years, far longer than mammals have. What if one branch had evolved differently? Not reptile engineers, not sci-fi cities, just a tool-using, climate-altering species that rose and vanished. Extinction events reset the planet. Asteroids, supervolcanoes, ice ages, civilizations, if fragile, would not survive those resets. Now the question becomes darker. Are industrial civilizations inherently temporary? Because when we search the universe for life, we don't find cities. We look for atmospheric imbalance. We scan exoplanets for oxygen spikes, for methane inconsistencies, for industrial-like chemical signatures. But what if we're catching planets in between civilizations? After collapse, after recovery. Maybe advanced species rise, alter their planet, then disappear before they ever spread to the stars. That possibility connects directly to another unsettling idea. The Great Filter. If civilizations are short-lived, that would explain the silence of the cosmos. not because no one exists, but because no one lasts. And suddenly the Silurian hypothesis isn't about the past, it's about us. If future scientists examined Earth 100 million years from now, would they debate whether we were real? Would they argue our carbon spike was volcanic? Our plastics were natural anomalies? Would they even know there were cities here? Or would we be reduced to a geological question mark? That's the haunting elegance of the hypothesis. It humbles us. We assume we are the pinnacle, the first, the only. But on a planet this old, certainty is dangerous. So here's where we leave it. There is no evidence of a lost ancient industrial civilization. But there is a profound truth. Deep time erases almost everything. And if civilization is just a brief chemical flicker, then the real mystery isn't who came before us. It's whether anyone will ever know we were here at all. Before you click away, sit with this for a moment. If another civilization existed millions of years ago and left only a faint chemical scar, we might never know. Not because it's hidden, but because time erased it. Now flip it. Imagine a species 50 million years in the future digging through rock layers. They find a sudden carbon spike, plastic fragments, radioactive traces. Would they call it natural? Or would they debate whether an intelligent species briefly changed the planet and vanished? Would we be a mystery? Here's the question I want you to wrestle with. Do you think Earth has hosted only one technological civilization? Or is it arrogant to assume we're the first? And even deeper, if industrial civilizations are almost invisible in deep time, what does that say about our future? Are we permanent? Or are we just a geological moment? Tell me what you think, not what sounds exciting. What actually makes sense? Were we first, or are we just the latest? I'll be reading the comments.